last 2 years, the nation has been gripped by a murder trial like no other. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts versus Karen Read. I mean, it's created a frenzy in real life and on social media. On Friday, in closing arguments, attorneys from both sides demanded the jurors see the evidence for what it was.
She was drunk. She hit him, and she left him to die. She left a man who was kind and generous and thoughtful. She left him alone. She left him alone to die.
They have failed. They cannot and they will not ever be able to prove that John was struck by a vehicle beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty, because the science does not lie, the medical evidence does not lie, the physics do not lie.
We all expect you to reach an impartial verdict dictated by your logic, without bias, without prejudice or sympathy, and not prompted by any facts except those that you've heard here in court during the trial.
And now, Karen Read's fate is in the hands of the jury. I'm Ann Emerson, and this is Deliberating, the Karen Read trial. Let's go back to Canton, Massachusetts, January 29, 2022. After a night of drinking, John O'Keefe was found dead in the front lawn of 34 Fairview Road. How he died has been widely debated. Prosecutors say Karen Read intentionally backed into John with her SUV and left him to die in a blizzard, but that's not what Karen Read's story is. I've got legal analyst and defense attorney Peter Elkin and WJAR reporter Katie Benoit with me. Katie, what was it like in court seeing Karen Read in person and just feet away from John's still grieving parents? You've been there at this trial that has just captured America. What was it like for you to see Karen Read in court when you got there?
She's sitting in front of the jury every single day, and she is listening to these days of testimony, and her family's in the courtroom, as well as John O'Keefe's family. And I think, going through a mistrial, there's a lot of things her defense has focused on this time around that they did not focus on last time around, that they're looking at doing again, and especially with the verdict forms. And I think there's a lot of anxiety going into this verdict coming up.
What was it like to see the parents, not just of the victim, because I couldn't take my eyes off of, I don't know if it was because of the way that the camera was facing or not, but it was so difficult. You saw Peg O'Keefe every day, right behind the defendant, behind Karen Read. What was that like? And of course, her father's on the other side. Was there tension in that room?
Definitely. I think when Peggy O'Keefe was testifying, her testimony was some of the most emotional testimony of this trial. She was crying on the stand. She had a tissue in her hands. And then, you have Karen Read's family. She's very close to her family. You can see she hugs them outside the courthouse. She will interact with them. Inside the courthouse, it seems that she doesn't interact with them as much when the jury is present, but
Right.
when the jury has left, she really seems to go over and talk to them. Sometimes at sidebars, she will kind of come off a sidebar and give a look or say something. Even her brother, she seems to talk to him. I've seen him kind of interact with the defense team after sidebars as well.
And the jurors. You're there with the jurors. We can't see the jurors. And, I basically, the whole time, I'm just sitting there waiting to hear from you, from the other reporters that were in that room, because that's everything, isn't it? Like, you've got to watch them every chance. And I'm going to get to you, our legal analyst, Peter Elkin, as well. I want to hear, tell me, Katie, what was that like?
It was a really interesting experience. A lot of them took notes. Some didn't. A couple didn't take notes at all, which there's so much evidence in this case, it's kind of hard to believe that some of them weren't taking notes. But there were certain things they reacted to. Not all the time. There was one particular juror that would smile a lot and kind of look back and forth and smirk sometimes at different types of testimony.
So, Peter, this is a retrial for the century. Tell me, what would it be like to be up there trying to prosecute or defend this case?
Certainly, in all the decades that I've been a lawyer, I've never seen a Massachusetts case get this much kind of attention, and the passions are high, and people are, and when you see picket lines and crowds outside a courtroom, most of the time they hate the guts of the person in there, and this time it's got incredible. I mean, the idea that Karen Read shows up in court and she gets applause and cheers, and this is really an unusual phenomenon. We've had bigger cases in Massachusetts, but this is the most controversial. For example, the marathon bombing case, I would think would be a bigger, more important case.
Right.
But 3 people died, and loads and loads of people got maimed and disfigured, and yet everybody thought he was guilty, and everybody hated his guts. End of story. There was no controversy here. But the facts are so competing with each other here. This is not a case where we have proof positive or a smoking gun. There's no eyewitness. There's no video. So it's really just kind of trying to piece together a story, and there's great arguments on both sides, and for everybody who testifies, the other side kind of cuts them down and finds little holes in it.
Which we'll hear.
I feel bad for the jury that is they're hearing all these competing sides, and for them to arrive at the truth is going to be really, really tough.
Well, I mean, as far as the charges that we're dealing with in this case, that's so complicated, right? Or is it not? Is this something that you guys deal with every day? I mean, take me through the charges on this case. What is she facing? We've got second-degree murder. We've got manslaughter while operating under the influence, and then we've got leaving the scene of a collision resulting in death.
I can basically say the entire Massachusetts bar, and even every prosecutor we talked to, is very surprised with the murder charge. That's much more of an intentional thing, or that you do something so random, recklessly, and crazy that nobody's really sure why they charged her with that. It sort of seems like overkill. Also, the idea of leaving the scene would show that, leaving the scene of an injury like that while drunk, that would show that you kind of had knowledge that you hit him. That's going to be a hard one to prove. So the only one that they would have any kind of a shot at would be the manslaughter charge, where even if she did it accidentally, unintentionally, didn't even realize she hit him, and somehow was drunk and hit him, didn't know it, and drove away, you could try to stick that charge there.
Right.
And that's why they say that the first trial, the jury came back and actually, after the trial was over, they said that murder charge and the leaving the scene, which she would have had to know, they said that the majority of people, that everybody voted her not guilty on that. But, and there's so many unprecedented side issues, but in this case, the jury did not know that. They thought it had to be all or nothing. They didn't think
in the first trial.
Yeah, they didn't think it could be not guilty here and guilty on this charge, and we can't come to an agreement here. But you've got to, if you have multiple counts, you can just pick and choose what you want.
Well, and Katie, we can see the jury, right? So, or you're watching the jury. We can't see the jury. When you're watching it, so I'm seeing it through your eyes. We can't talk about all of the specifics about who's on this jury, but we can talk about their age, the makeup here, female, male. Is this different from the last trial? Are they dealing with a different jury makeup?
Yes, I believe the jury this time around is a little bit younger than the jury last time around. They're a little bit older. But they did select the alternates today, and those jurors, the 12 jurors that will deliberate today. So they'll be ready to get the case, and on Monday deliberate some more.
Well, Karen made a decision, I felt like a last-minute decision. Maybe it was just me getting hooked into this, but Karen decided not to take the stand. But that doesn't mean she hasn't been talking. And she has been talking. She did a number of interviews and documentaries, and they really brought out a side of Karen that was very intimate.
So I thought, could I have run him over? Did he try to get me as I was leaving and I didn't know it? I mean, I've always got the music blasting. It's snowing. I got the wipers going, the heater blasting. Did he come and hit the back of my car, and I hit him in the knee, and he's drunk and passed out and asphyxiated or something?
So in a way, she did testify, and even the other day outside of court, she said, "Oh, they heard from me. They heard a lot from me." So I think this is an interesting way prosecutors something they did this time around that they weren't able to do last time around.
The conventional wisdom is we criminal defense attorneys almost never have our clients talk to the media at all, because even if you're totally innocent, you could misstate something, or they'll say, well, you contradicted yourself, you said this 3 years ago or something, so you never do it because they can exactly what's happening here. And so when she started talking to the media, I remember I kept saying to myself, I'm not getting it. She's got extraordinarily talented lawyers, and I said, what? They've got to have there's something I'm not seeing here, but I'm not sure, because I think this is a classic case
It's in
on
the
why you
opening.
don't want it done.
It's in the closing. She's all over it for the prosecution. And I mean, this was huge to me. I have never, I mean, do you know how many times I try and get somebody to talk before they go on trial? And I couldn't get anybody. There's no way. This is very unusual. And when we come back, we're going to talk to our very own deliberators who are each heavily invested in this case. We're going to hear what they think about all this when we come back. "12 jurors are deliberating Karen Reed's future behind closed doors, but people have been judging this case on their own. So we have our guests, and the first thing that happens in the jury room is to vote, to see where they're at as a group. So let's do that here. Juror number 1, what is your vote right now if you had to go straight into a jury room?
Not guilty on everything.
Not guilty, factually innocent.
Guilty as charged.
Got it. Okay. Our 3 who have been glued to this case, following it just as closely as those people in the jury room right now, I believe it, and they have some very strong opinions. So let's get right to it. On my right, we have Nate Bartels. Now, he has been, besides a true crime, I almost can call you a detective, you're a researcher, right?
Yeah.
But you have an encyclopedic knowledge
Yeah.
of crime cases that I'm sure you'll let us know a little bit about as well. He's also a postal worker.
Yeah.
And then here on my left, I have Lena Simone. You're a personal assistant, correct? But you have been following this case very, very closely. And I mean, it's been a personal journey in a lot of ways.
Riveting.
For sure. And Jason Grant, also, you are on the side of the defense as well. Right now, we may change some opinions here. I'm not going to make you hold to that at all. But you know, but Jason, you know, you're a Dedham local.
Yeah, right down the street from the courthouse. Yeah.
You've spent a lot of time outside that courthouse.
Yeah, the last 2 years I've been down there a crazy amount of time, just going to the pretrial hearings, everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely amazing when we see people spending so much time and energy with these cases. I mean, I know I do it as a job, but it's amazing to see the dedication, because you really do know an inordinate amount about this case. Now, we did invite a 4th guest. We did not leave Nate on his own, just so you know. We did invite a 4th guest, but at the very last minute was not able to make it.
Yeah.
But I know that Nate can hold his own, because I have talked to him about some of this already. So let's get to the case.
When you looked up and saw that person and asked about any background, what did she say to you?
I hit him.
How clearly do you remember her words saying to you, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him?
I remember it very distinctly.
I asked if there had been any significant trauma that happened that preceded this, and she answered with a series of statements that she repeated. I hit him. I hit him. There was a woman next to us who told her to calm down, stop talking, calm down, you're hysterical. So she repeated, I hit him, and a police officer asked her, said, you what? And she repeated it again, I hit him.
And guys, you just heard those first responders testify under oath that Karen Reed said she hit him. Not once, not twice, 3 times. So we got to start with those 3 little words. I hit him. Will those words be the words that put Karen Reed behind bars?
No, she never said that. She said, it was a question, did I hit him? And she just said that she said it in front of the police officer, and I think it was Officer Saraf, and he asked her, "What would you say?" She said it again. I hit him, but he didn't write it down in reports, and he didn't. If she said I hit him, he should be in cuffs, but right there, and then they went over the trial. They proved that when they were claiming this happened, they were performing CPR and John, getting him into the ambulance, and they weren't even near Karen when she was over with the officer and stuff.
I mean, I have to ask Jason, like, did you ever hear her say, because you were outside that courthouse, you heard her talk about all this stuff, and I am not forgetting the other people sitting at this table right now, but when you were outside that courthouse, did she ever talk about this?
She said plenty of times. It was more a question, like asking.
I mean, in the documentary and stuff, we heard that.
Did I hit him? Like, because she's arriving there, she never expected that what happened to John, that they beat him up in the house and threw him out in the lawn, and so she's trying to process it.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yeah. So that's why we're here, right?
Yeah.
Because that is what the defense is coming to is these theories, and that's what we're trying to understand right now. Nate, what do you think? I mean, when you hear that, what goes through your mind?
It reminds me of the of Phil Hartman's murder with Bryn Hartman, his third wife. He's married 2 times previously.
I told you, encyclopedic knowledge of cases. So we're yeah. I mean, I know that people will be able to Google it when they're watching this. So let's go.
Take it back to 1998. What happened was Bryn went out that night with a friend and drank, and came home, and she and Phil had some sort of, we're never obviously going to know because both parties are dead. She had some sort of argument. It wasn't clear whether at the restaurant she used cocaine, but she was also intoxicated.
Right.
And I believe there was Zoloft in her system too.
Okay. But
the thing was, they had an argument. She shot and she killed Phil. And then she called one of her friends who lived across town. I think it was in LA. Yeah, across LA. And she drove over there, and then she told him, she's like, "Oh, I killed Phil." And initially over the phone, he's like, "Bryn, can you just like leave me alone? You know, this is like late hours of the night."
All right.
And so she drove over there drunk. And then she brought the gun there that she shot Phil with.
Right.
So he's initially like, "Oh shit." He's like, "I'm looking in the gun and there are bullets spent here." You know, and it's like.
So what does that do to you when you hear this in this case? Like, does this tie this together for you? Does this make sense to you? Is that what?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Like psychologically, this makes sense.
It makes sense to me because it's like there's kind of this moment where, you know, if someone's I call it like a Bryn Hartman moment.
Okay.
Where if someone's intoxicated or they're drunk or they're high, they do something out of like a moment of anger.
Okay.
And you know, it could have been that she deliberately hit him. It could have also been that she's drunk and she pulled it down.
Allegedly.
You know, allegedly drunk, pulled it down just one when she meant to hit drive, went reverse, hit him, and then just drove off, and not realizing that she hit him till he doesn't answer the phone.
And that's what our jurors have to figure out.
But the first time this ever came up, I hit him, was actually in trial when there was nothing. 2 years later, like there was no reports written. No one ever said it. It was always, could I have hit him? And then no one said I hit him until she got on the stand. And she's friends with Caitlin Elbert, or she went to school with someone named Caitlin Elbert.
Right, and he was also.
Lena, go ahead.
He was in the ambulance with the engine running. So how could he have possibly heard that moment of I hit him, and also Jen McCabe says it was 2 times. This girl says it is 3 times. Another one says it was 5 times. And why is there no officers testifying to this? The police were on scene.
Yeah, he said it in front of an officer, and he would have definitely wrote that in the report and probably put her in custody.
And if I'm the prosecutor, I'm going to call a police officer.
Peter, you're our legal analyst. When you have this inflection issue, this tone, this question versus this not a question, when did it come up? When did it not come up? How damaging is this?
Well, that's where kind of the debate is on this, because first of all, if somebody literally confesses to a homicide and yet the police don't write it down in the report, the paramedics don't write it down, this Jen McCabe, who's kind of against her in testifying again and again, didn't bring it up even in grand jury hearings that happened months later, and it comes up. It just, that's what the defense is kind of jumping out on. Otherwise, I mean, it is one of the stronger points for the prosecution, but the fact that it's just very unusual that somebody would confess to it. All these people claim many months later that they heard it, but they didn't tell it. If it was me, I might happen to mention, confess to the homicide 2 hours ago. So I think that's characteristic of this case, though, the entire Karen Reed case. It seems like for every bit of evidence one side has, the other side has a counter argument, and where this kind of may help the defense, whether it's right or wrong, is that, again, the standard is, was the case proven beyond a reasonable doubt? The defense does not have to prove that she's innocent or that she's not guilty. They can just sit back and say, hey, did you prove that it wasn't, that she's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? And for every bit of evidence, back and forth, there's somebody, for every expert that testifies on one bit of scientific evidence, another expert says absolutely wrong.
It's the battle of the experts.
So this poor jury is, I don't know where they're going to go, but if at the end of the trial, they were to say to themselves, I have no idea I'm scratching my head, I have no idea what went on. At that point, it would have to be, it wasn't proved beyond a reasonable doubt, which doesn't necessarily vindicate her. It's not a you're innocent, but it's that's really the standard of the case. And that's why that may slightly favor the defense in a trial like this, where there's no proof positive.
I went back and listened. I know we got the, go ahead.
But
Nate,
one of the other problems, too, is that when you have a battle of the experts, per se, you have the CSI effect, where people sometimes in murder trials or other trials expect kind of an unreasonable amount of evidence in order to convict. Like if they watch CSI as a crime show, for instance, a lot of the stuff on that show has never passed, what is it called, a Fry test?
Yeah, it would have to pass that, and there has to be some kind of semblance of veracity to it or truth.
Well, the defense's whole argument is that Karen never hit John, right? That there was no collision. And I think that really gets to the basis of this case. This is why this is a battle of the experts this time around. I mean, really, we've got one expert that says one thing. We got another expert that goes another way. It feels very different from the last trial. It feels very different from the last trial.
It does.
A lot of the witnesses, too, for the Commonwealth were interviewed right after, a day or two after this incident. And what they said then is different what they're saying now at trial 2 years and 3 years later. And I think it even argued, like you said, his memory got better with time. One of the paramedics was saying he did change in the testimony.
And also with the battle of the experts, I put that in quotes because one of the Commonwealth's experts lied and said he had a degree from a particular college of the University of Alabama that doesn't exist. He's been working on his bachelor's degree, that is Burgess.
You're talking about Mr. Burgess,
yes. And so that's one of your experts. Your other expert, the only test that he did was painting his arm blue and leaning up against the car going, 2 miles an hour?
You're talking about Judson Welcher.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so Judson Welcher with the Commonwealth, he was a reconstructionist who showed the SUV hitting his shoulder, and we've got it here so you can see what we're talking about. Hitting his shoulder at 2 miles per hour. He used blue paint to show the moment of impact, right? And then I'm going to take you on the other side, and then there's Andrew Rentschler with ARCA, who was also an expert for the defense, who said the injuries weren't consistent with a vehicle strike. It felt like this not only a battle of experts, but a battle of crash test dummies that was going on. Like,
I feel like the difference between ARCA and Aperture is night and day. Like,
it's preschool versus a PhD.
And what's the paint thing? He just like touched up and he didn't prove nothing about the force of the energy, how it would break a bone, or what it wouldn't do with the force. And the ARCA explained they had readings and everything, and the pressures and the amounts and stuff. This guy just did paint on a thing and put his elbow out.
Remember, ARCA was brought in by another law enforcement agency and then hired by the defense. Oh,
you're talking about the first trial.
Yeah.
Yes, so that's, I mean...
They were independent, didn't even know Karen.
Right, they had nothing to do with this case except for to just do what the agency asked them to.
For somebody that is extremely specific about
there's
case
another-
pops
there's
up, I want
another
to just
case.
ask about Burgess for a second. Like, how did you feel about, like, let's stay focused on, like, for a second, this particular case, these experts.
Okay,
How did you feel about Burgess when you found out that he didn't have necessarily the degree that he purported to have on his CV? Did that bother you? Seriously, tell me the truth.
I mean, if you want to nitpick down on individual things
Mm-hmm.
on someone's CSV, that seems kind of to me a little, because for instance, what is it, Lasorda, right?
Bachelor of Science?
Yeah,
Ouch.
yeah. So, I mean, it just strikes to me it's an attempt to dismiss what he said when he has the degree, but he's working on the, it's
Right.
just like you're picking at a resume.
I know, and
That's
what-
really kind of like,
But
petty
he
to
doesn't
do.
have the
Yeah, he was
degree.
working off like 15 years.
But Peter, do you put somebody on the stand to testify
Credibility.
that had that
Well, yeah,
oops
you see,
moment?
The problem with that is, if it was just a matter of him saying, I've been working on my bachelor's degree for 17 years and I haven't got it yet, that's fine, because, you know, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and a lot of you don't need, you can be a high-tech person and not have any degrees at all. The problem with that at any trial is when it turned out he told everybody he had a bachelor's degree, and he had a bachelor's degree in a particular with
Right.
a particular major that college didn't even have, so it was just fabricated. The problem with that is you look at that and you say, okay, so you made that up, you fabricated that, now we're hearing your expert testimony. How do we know you're not fabricating that? And that's where it does hurt at times. And it may be, he may be a brilliant guy, but something like that kind of undercuts him whether it's fair or not.
And he had it on his LinkedIn
But
profile.
so I'm going to get us back to, tell me, after we've looked at this and we're looking at the experts, so was John hit by an SUV?
Yeah.
Was he hit by an SUV?
No.
Absolutely not.
Yes,
They
no.
didn't prove anything.
What's your proof?
But
Well-
the blue paint on your arm? Like,
That he
at one
leaned
month-
into.
They didn't do anything
Automobile
scientific.
injuries are also notoriously inconsistent, depending on the size of the vehicle and depending on how angle of hit also as well. For instance, like I was hit when I was, what was I, 13, 14 years old. I was on a bike and this guy was backing out and he nailed me and then he drove away. I never knew who this person was. Someone else saw me on like the side of the curb and like got me up and ended up taking me to the, like, called 911, took me to the hospital. My bike was totaled, but it's like I didn't break any bones, although this guy hit me at like 10, 20 miles an hour backing
Did you have
out
a
of
bruise?
I mean, I was bruised up.
But John didn't have any bruises.
And
But it's
I-
also cold out too. Like for
still
instance,
bruised.
one thing that people have said, they've said, I'm surprised if she hit him this fast, there wasn't blood all over the car. But it's like, that would depend on, first of all, blood, for instance, has a different
But
coagulation.
he lost a lot of blood too. I mean, so where's the blood? It's
where's
not
the
out
blood?
on the yard.
Exactly.
There was only some droplets on the yard. Where's the rest of the blood?
But that's also something too. There's another case, to go back in California, there was this case, Dusty Harless. They mentioned it on, what is it called, that Forensic Files.
Okay.
So what happened with Dusty Harless was David Gensler was the guy who killed him, was Dusty Harless attacked him because he asked his girlfriend, it's raining out, he's like,
Yeah.
he didn't realize she was alone, he's like, do you need a ride? And Dusty pulled him out of the car and was beating the crap out of him, put him in this kind of wrestling hold. And Gensler happened to have a knife on him. And to get out of the hold, he like reached back over his shoulder to stab him.
Okay.
But the thing was, there was no blood on the back of the shirt, but there was blood on the front of the shirt. So at the first trial, they said Gensler's just there jabbing him.
Okay.
But it's like when they did a computer reanimation or animation of this, they showed like that he turned around, and when he turned around, arterial blood spraying out, hit him.
Yeah, but there was
We've
no
gotta-
blood out there
Yeah.
at all. No, yeah, not enough that
Yeah,
he
but I'm
lost.
saying-
I want to get to Elizabeth La Posada because she says that's not what was going on with these arms. Now, she is the former medical examiner for the state of Rhode Island, right?
There was
The chief
also a lot
medical
of
examiner.
controversy with her as well.
There's absolutely. There's a lot to talk about there. But when she looked at the autopsy report, guess what? Let's listen to what La Posada said on the stand.
Did you look at any information that would tell you what the speed of that impact may have been?
Well, it didn't hit him, so it doesn't matter. By looking at the body, I could tell that there was no evidence of impact with a vehicle.
You didn't try to get any information about the speed of the vehicle? It was totally irrelevant to you?
Correct. It did not hit him.
I mean, okay, La Posada, there are questions, absolutely, but she was the chief medical examiner for 12 years. When you heard that there was she never even put that into account, what did you think?
Well, if there's no collision, if she knows, based upon her experience and the autopsy, if she knows that there's no collision, what difference does the speed of the car make?
Exactly.
It makes absolutely no sense for her to have any involvement in that. In addition, she also determined that he didn't die of hypothermia because, and I'm going to butcher this, Warensky, I'm not sure how you say it, but those nodules, I think, that are on the pancreas perhaps, that show if someone dies of hypothermia, you would have those in your pancreas, and he did not have any of those, and that's a sure sign of hypothermia. So that means if he doesn't have hypothermia, if he doesn't have frostbite, okay, Karen supposedly hit him at what, 12:30? So that would put him in the snow for about 6-ish hours. No frostbite? No hypothermia?
And the blood was still fresh, but Karen had blood on her when she was trying to give him CPR and stuff. If he was out for 6 hours in the freezing cold, the blood would be frozen. Like, it wouldn't be fresh blood still.
Right.
Well, I think that one of the things is, like, you look at these experts. They all have incredible credentials. Yes, a few of them kind of got skewed, or there could have been like a scandal at one point, or there's something left off the CV, that sort of thing. But you still have these people that are really good at what they do.
Yeah.
But they're also all paid to be there.
Karen Reed is accused of intentionally hitting John. She called him more than 50 times that morning between midnight and 6 a.m. when his body was found. None of those calls were answered. She left several voicemails. She's mad. She's yelling. She makes all kinds of accusations. And when we come back, you are going to hear those calls, and we need to warn you, they do contain a lot of foul language.
At 12:37:08 a.m., the defendant calls John, and voicemail number 1 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman, would you kindly play the voicemail for 12:37:08?
Voicemail number 3 is left with voice.
John, I'm here with your fucking kids. Nobody knows what the fuck you want, you fucking pervert.
Voicemail number 5 is left with voice.
Yeah, it's 1 in the morning. I'm with your fucking niece and nephew. You fucking pervert. You're a fucking pervert.
So when voicemail 6 is left with voice.
John, I'm going home. I cannot babysit your niece. I need to go home. You are fucking using me right now. You're fucking another girl. Kim's sleeping next to me. You're a fucking loser. Fuck yourself.
The day before John O'Keefe died, Karen admitted that she and John were having a rager of an argument, screaming match that left them both, wondering where this 2-year relationship was going to be going. And I don't think there was any way they could have seen this tragic end. There's no way that they could see something like this was just hours away. Katie, I wanted to ask you, you were in this courtroom, you hear this, traumatic is the only word I can think of for voicemails like this. We still don't know what Karen was thinking in this moment, but what was everybody else thinking as they're listening to this? How did it go down? You were in the first trial and the second trial. You've heard plenty of this.
I think these voicemails kind of really illustrate that something was going on there in their relationship. They were fighting, they were arguing, that there was some anger between the two of them. So I think that when the jury probably heard these, they were thinking, oh, there was some type of fight, there was some type of something going on between them, and that the relationship probably wasn't in the best, space when whatever happened.
Yeah,
well, I would say that there's something in this for everybody. Once again, this is both sides can make hay of this, because the defense would say that she is getting that she obviously doesn't know that he is injured or dead or anything. She's like keeps texting and calling him and saying, "Where are you?" And then finally she's getting angry, like, "Are you with another woman or something?" She's swearing. So the prosecution will say, "Okay, here's an example of the anger, and they must not be getting along, and this vitriol back and forth." And I think the defense can make hay of this, though, and say, look, clearly this is somebody who is not aware I hit somebody or I hit him. This is proof that she thinks, why aren't you returning my call? Where are you? Why, and this is like rude, and then she's getting increasingly angry you're with somebody. So this is, again, something where it seems like every bit of evidence in this case, I've rarely seen anything like this, where there's an argument and then there's a counter argument, and what does the jury make of it?
Yeah, she's thinking John is in a party having fun and left her out there, ignored her, and then now she's home with the kids again by herself, and he's out having fun. That's why if she really did something to him, she'd be calling like "nice, I love you" or something.
I mean, do you call somebody 50 times when you think that they're dead? I mean, that's really what you're
screaming
saying.
at them. Yeah.
And don't forget at the waterfall, there was testimony by somebody else who was there that they were affectionate. He kissed her on the forehead.
With the Kolakika.
But was this covering your tracks?
What this reminds me of is Jodi Arias calling and leaving voicemails after, for instance, she left Travis for dead.
Right.
And that she's trying to cover her ass. But in reality, it's like...
But Nate, she had so many drinks. She's already said that she had been drinking that night. How are you having like a whole mastermind plot behind that?
Well, the thing is that if he's not home, basically, okay, so if she hit him and then she realized, I hit him as I'm sobering up, I'm already trying to come to create something in which I can spin. Like for instance at the police station when she was there, she's like, aren't you also in on the conspiracy? Like when they arrest her.
She said it was a joke because she was being arrested again for, this is a joke. There's no evidence that she did it. And she's like, yeah. And then she said, Brian and Colin beat him up in the house and... Yeah.
Well, Brennan wants us, Hank Brennan, the special prosecutor on this case, for the Commonwealth, wants us to believe from what I was hearing that this was a cover-up on some level on her part. That she was trying to cover her tracks or...
She was the only one acting concerned that night. When they found, they pulled up and saw John. She was the one who dropped her phone while she was calling John, and the voicemail actually picked up Jen McCabe in the car, calling her sister in the house after the 911 call. But then she ran out there. She was the only one hysterical, trying to save him.
But why? She knew exactly where to go. Doesn't that bother you? That she knew exactly where to go?
It was the last place I went there, and then if you drive by that lawn, it's a lot smaller. As you can see, you would see a body right away.
Who's been to the house?
I've been down there.
I delivered mail in Canton.
Yeah. I have not been to the house.
You haven't been to the house, okay.
And Jen McCabe, because Jen McCabe got there, and you're looking for John, and they find him in there. Wouldn't you think, like, I should go check on my sister? And by the way, the house, I'd be running into the house, banging on the door, making sure they're all right, or John, and she had no concerns with that. She was like all calm on the phone, 911 call. I'd be running right into that house.
Right, no lights are on, nothing. And also, you've got Brian Albert and his wife, all of this chaos is going on, screaming, because we can hear it through Karen's phone, like, as Jason said. All of this is going on, and they didn't wake up.
Yes,
they didn't. It's just simply unbelievable.
But people also react differently to stress, And
but he's a first responder.
And then where was the dog too? Because the dog was there earlier, but then when all this was going on earlier in the morning, people yelling.
I would agree with you.
There was no dog out there barking or anything. And then when the officers went in, they said there was no dog barking.
Look, but did he not want to get involved?
But
was
also
that
calls to Lucky's testimony where he's like, I didn't see him on the lawn.
Oh, we're going to talk about
Lucky. You have a plow driver. Like, I work for the post office. I deliver mail. Every snowstorm, as people in the post office, like mail carriers love to say, the plow trucks drive in a straight line. If they're up high in a truck, then it's designed to look down. The periphery is bad.
He said he had a perfect view of the lawn, the lights were
up. People say that, but then it's like a plow truck driver.
But why would he have a line? He was actually he knows McDowell's. He was friends with them. He's from the town. He grew up with them.
Yeah, that's just not believable. I mean, we've seen the plow truck. We've seen the lights on it. It's this big what do you call it, Frankenstein?
Yeah,
Frankentruck with all of these lights on it.
When it's snowing out, you're not gonna be looking around for scenery.
He's right by the fire hydrant. He's watching the fire hydrant.
But they destroy mailboxes.
As you said, God forbid any animals.
You have mailboxes. Okay, I'm gonna go with
that. That is hard to have a U.S. postal worker here right now that actually does this.
Like for instance, you have 7 boxes in a row. Okay, 7 mailboxes. Like, could you crane it down or maybe not? Okay, anyway, so 7 boxes in a row. So a plow truck might just hit all 7, or if the street is angled, it might hit some of those 7. But I've literally seen them just do that, and then when I see the plow company later, sometimes if they're stopped like getting coffee or something, just ask them, I'm like, it's funny. You guys say you pay attention. If these boxes are high enough off the ground, we're not in, Syracuse, New York with 7 feet of snow where you're driving in like a snow tunnel, where it's like, the argument is, oh, well, I didn't see the box. But my argument with them sometimes is, yeah, you didn't see the box, but you can't use that argument if you hit someone's kid.
Okay, I'm going to get us to the next thing right now, because one thing that everybody is going to agree on is that probably the most important thing of this case, Karen Reed said it, the cornerstone of this case could possibly be the taillight.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The taillight is the most controversial part of this investigation, and when it was broken, that's a question. How badly was it broken?
Officer
we want to know
Barrows.
that. Who broke it? Let's hear from Sergeant Barrows.
Is that consistent, this photograph consistent with the condition of the taillight as you saw it on January 29th, 2022, at just after 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
Absolutely not.
What's different about this photo, sir?
That middle section was intact when I was there.
Now, okay, Sergeant Barrows is a police officer who came in from a different jurisdiction, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, so he saw the taillight when it was being towed, when they towed Karen's SUV, and he's saying that the taillight looked different than that. Was this a pivotal moment?
But did he
Am I right?
Did he take a photo of it then?
That wasn't his job. It was Michael Proctor should have been taking the photo. He was just there as backup because he's the local guy. He has nothing to do with the case. Proctor should have been, or Buchanan should have been taking a picture of, if that's the murder weapon, and you pull it up to the house, whoa, it's smashed into 46 pieces and gone. That's the first thing you do. Pull out your phone, take a picture, and then the case is closed. But now they didn't take no pictures of it, and then they brought it back to Canton.
And they also didn't need to, because if the taillight is such that was just shown completely smashed out, the diffuser is also smashed out. So if the diffuser is completely smashed, the lights don't work. But yet we have a picture at 4:07 and 5:12 of Karen's lights working.
Photoshop.
Right.
So really, we're going to we're going deep.
Yeah.
We're going deep on the
One of the hearings, when they had the laptop open up, I think there was a photo editing thing still tab left open when he was showing the pictures of it.
Wow, there's so much distrust, I hear.
Well, what about Officer Devers that testified that the chief of police and also Brian Higgins were in the Sallyport for 45 minutes with Karen's car, and it just miraculously, that video it's just gone now.
Yeah. And then
isn't Officer Devers the one who the lawyer wanted to testify in such a way that she would be?
Oh, Devers was trying to,
because she gave one statement to the FBI about seeing him, and then she said she misread, it was a false memory. How is that a false memory?
I don't know. But this is just like one of the things that we keep on going with, consistency versus inconsistency. Peter, how does a jury track? How are they supposed to look at all of this and make sense of it and track all of these inconsistencies?
Well, that's why I think I'm almost starting to sound like a broken record when I say there's reasonable doubt here. If there's so much contradictory evidence. I could go on. I don't know how to keep it succinct about this broken taillight thing. The defense is saying that, look, when his body was found, the police did a complete search of the area looking for anything, saw no pieces of broken taillight. They actually got out a leaf blower to clear the 3 inches of snow, found nothing. They did a second search, didn't find anything. Then late that afternoon, around 5 o'clock or afterwards, they come back and there's pieces of it all over the place, 46 pieces. So defense is saying, no, they planted it there.
Yeah.
However,
the police also found,
you also can't argue
small pieces of clear cocktail glass. Right. They found it then, but then 12 hours later, when a foot of snow, and then they couldn't find the big piece of red tail light. And then after the car's brought back to them, then now they can find it with a foot of snow, and they disappear.
The jury, I do not think this is an easy job, right? What's that?
I said I don't envy the jury their
Right, exactly. For every point we've had a counterpoint. How is this jury going to get to a verdict?
But I also wonder,
who put on a better case? That's really where this is going to come down to, and we're going to have that right when we come back. We have no idea how long the jury is going to take before they come back with a verdict. this time we really don't know what's going to happen. We do have a jury verdict slip here that is really confusing.
It's very convoluted.
Right? The verdict slip, especially the second count, you know, it's probably not confusing to somebody as fabulous as Peter Ellikin over there, but for the rest of us, you know, it's going to take a second, and I can only imagine how much pressure this jury is under. So let's just get to it. Did the prosecution meet their burden of proof? It's extremely high, right? We know no more, like, this, there can be no mistakes on this one for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
We don't know if there's going to be a second chance on this. Was there anything anyone said here that made you pause and think, maybe
No.
I haven't looked at it from all the different angles?
I already heard all the facts, and my mind is made
The
up.
facts don't lie.
They don't.
You're sticking to it. Okay, why?
I have.
Did they really do what they needed to do in this defense?
100%. Go ahead, Jason.
No, I think the defense did an awesome, both trials, like every witness that the Commonwealth brought up, the defense team is just awesome, and they poked holes in every single witness, I believe.
Well, they poked holes in every witness,
created doubt.
but didn't the prosecution, didn't Commonwealth come right back and poke a bunch of holes all over the place?
It's
like Swiss cheese in
They
that.
just speaks
The
and
case
speaks.
that's put on by the
Lies.
defense is a lot less dynamic and persuasive this time around than it was the first time around, where there was much more conspiracy put on.
Okay.
This time they concentrated more on,
But
she wasn't hit.
But
he
you know,
wasn't
the
hit
thing
by the
is that one thing that the defense kind of admitted in changing the third party culpability change to parties rather than specific parties,
like a hybrid.
is kind of reminds me of the Aaron Hernandez trial, when the defense at their closing arguments said Aaron was there, but he didn't kill Odin Lloyd. That they said the other two guys did it, not Aaron. But if Aaron didn't kill Odin Lloyd, why was Aaron holding the gun when he left the house? For instance, and it's like, but if you're changing this strategy here, that's going to lead potentially to the jurors being confused.
I think the prosecution, the Commonwealth has been changing their story. Especially at Trooper Paul last year, and he did a pirouette through the air with his landed somewhere, and then it was a 3-point turn. Then she backed up in reverse at 24 miles an hour. They're the ones that keep changing the story. The defense has been the same all the way.
How do you not call your lead investigator? How do you not call? That's, to me, speaks volumes. He was the lead investigator, and you didn't call him. He ran the entire investigation, and you didn't call him. Not you, of course, but Hank did not call him. So, that's crazy to me. And he was also
why didn't the defense call him?
But they also defense didn't call him because he saw the text that from Karen to her attorney where she said allegedly said,
I don't think they
I
needed to
hit
do
him.
it. They just try to keep it more simple, and then it makes it look bad that they didn't call him.
Well, let's be honest. All they had to do was raise reasonable doubt, and this is the Bowden defense.
Yeah.
And, Peter, take us through the Bowden defense.
Okay, Bowden defense is really when you say that the police did not do a good job. And I think that's classic here. I think probably everybody kind of agrees with that the prosecution would have to be a lot stronger if it was otherwise. But, can you imagine the lead investigator, Proctor, shows up, actually knows everybody in the house and friends and et cetera, and doesn't take himself out of it, which would be the appearance of bias. And then he finds a body right in front of the house where supposedly this person was going to a party the night before, and doesn't even go inside the house and look for anything, and doesn't investigate. Was there a struggle? Because you got to at least touch on everything. And so that was just one example. There's numerous examples, but the defense keeps going back to that again and again, that the lead investigator was so biased, and from the word go, he said, I'm not even considering anybody in the house because they're police officers. And then, of course, he starts texting not just other officers, which he is only allowed to do, but his buddies from high school and everything, and talking about her disabilities and illnesses because she's got MS and Crohn's disease, and talks about, I haven't found any nude pictures of her yet. and calling all kinds of insulting names. So there was so many problems with the police investigation. I think even the prosecution got out of trouble with that.
I'm gonna be honest with you. If you're trying to concoct like the O.J. Simpson style conspiracy, like that just doesn't fly here, because you're saying that basically 60 or 70 officers would have to be in the know that this is a conspiracy to risk their careers to just set up one person. You know, and in the O.J. Simpson case, when they argued that, they took advantage of the fact that the LA riots had happened not too long ago.
He didn't do a lot of it. Like he did the geofence for the property who was in the house, and he only did Google. He subpoenaed Google for Google records, but they all had iPhones. And then, so they didn't, the geofence.
All those phones are gone now.
Yeah, and he waited years. Some witnesses. They only interviewed certain witnesses who would push their story, and then some of the witnesses they didn't interview till like years later, 2 years later.
There's also this great meme that I've seen kicked around, which is shows like this kind of Scooby-Doo cartoon.
Sure.
Which is I wish I could pull it up.
I know.
Yeah. You can look it up. It shows a woman getting out of a car, and then it shows the car with the taillight broken, and then it says above her head it says, "I think I hit him." And then the Scooby-Doo guy, the one with the tie or whatever it is, not the. But he's saying, let's look in the basement, you know, and it's like, and then it says above, it says, if, you know, Karen Reed fans had said this, were, you know, Scooby-Doo world or whatever it is, I'd have to pull it up.
But Nate, you know, when we get to this, the issue is that we have a charge card here that the verdict slip. There are so many different ways for them to take this case. Now, before we get there, I want to just say, like, how are you from the defense's side? If she is found guilty, how are you going to feel about that? What's gonna happen when you open the newspaper or you go to the court or whatever and you find out that she's been found guilty? How would you feel about that?
Personally, I'm going to be absolutely beside myself, because the facts are that any one of us could be Karen Reed. Okay, I would hope that I wouldn't go out and drive drunk. I certainly wouldn't do that, but any one of us could be set up in this way. She is the fall girl, and those are the facts. The Commonwealth has not proved that she did this. And in fact, the defense, and this is just my opinion, has completely put up so much reasonable doubt. Even one thing that they talked about, there's doubt. And if there's one bit of doubt, she has to be found not guilty.
It's almost like
we're coming to a close here.
The Commonwealth is like uncovering all the evidence and stuff. I mean, I'm sorry, the defense is. And the Commonwealth is like they're playing defense to defend the McAlberts and stuff and the people in the house.
Look, I'm gonna.
Can I quickly?
Very quickly, like 10 seconds. You got 10 seconds.
What I want to say is, in terms of, you know, whether you know what Karen Reed is guilty or not, she's still drinking. Like as a true crime researcher, I go to the hotels, I've gone to the bars,
most of them are drinking all day
and restaurants.
I think we could all.
You know what they say?
That we're
they say this when I've gone to, you know, restaurants, bars, where she's gone to eat, yes.
But it's all hearsay.
But the servers have said to me, I asked, I'm like, okay,
but even
Nate, they didn't prove it.
No, but you were.
Can I
just quickly say this?
But as we come to a close, I want to say something about this panel. You guys are incredible. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Taking a moment to talk about this. I understand there's a lot of emotion behind this, and you have put a lot of time into this. And I want to say thank you to Peter Ellikin and the amazing Katie Benoit. But then I also want to talk about the victim in this case. Boston police officer John O'Keefe. And no matter how this ends, we must remember the victim. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.